In the quiet village of Sunderpur, nestled between green hills and winding rivers, lived a boy named Arav and a girl named Mira. From different families, different lives, but united by something deeper than words, a shared fire in their hearts to rise above their circumstances and build a life of meaning. Arav was the son of Ramesh, a humble mason who built homes but could barely afford to fix their own. From the age of 7, Arav would carry bricks, mix cement, and watch closely as his father laid each stone with care. His hands were rough, his back strong, and his eyes always searching, not for rest but for opportunity. He studied by the flickering flame of a kerosene lamp every night. Books borrowed, sometimes stolen from garbage bins outside the school, were his most prized possessions. Mathematics fascinated him. The logic, the certainty, the way everything could be solved if approached the right way. Life is like a wall, his father once said. You build it one brick at a time. And so Arav did. Mira lived across the village in a modest hut filled with the soft clatter of her mother's loom. Her mother, Radha, was a weaver, known for making intricate saris that took weeks to complete. Their family barely survived, but Mira always wore a smile, the kind that could light up even the darkest corners of Sunderpur. Mira woke before dawn, helped with chores, and then walked miles to the government school. Unlike others, she never complained. She loved stories, especially those of women who changed the world with grit and kindness. Her dream was to become a teacher, to open a school in the village where every child could learn without walking for hours or worrying about fees. Her notebooks were filled with lesson plans and ideas. In her heart, she wasn't just preparing for exams, she was preparing for change. They first met when Mira wandered into the construction site where Arav was helping his father build a house. She had been collecting herbs near the field and stopped to rest in the shade. Arav, drenched in sweat and dust, noticed her from a distance and offered her water. "You go to the government school?" he asked, wiping his face. "Yes," Mira replied. "You don't." "Only when work allows," he said, with a shrug that was too heavy for a teenager. That brief exchange sparked a friendship, not loud or dramatic, but the kind that grows quietly, like a tree taking root in stone. They began studying together after school, under the banyan tree. Arav taught Mira math. Mira helped him with English. They'd exchange stories, dreams, fears. At times, they'd work together, Arav carrying sacks of cement while Mira spun yarn with her mother, always supporting each other. When people in the village whispered, they ignored it. Their friendship wasn't built on fleeting emotion. It was built on shared struggle, on understanding each other's hunger, not just for food, but for more. One day, Mira said, "Do you ever feel like we were meant for something else?" Arav nodded. "Yes. But not just meant, we have to build it." Hard work, persistence, and sleepless nights paid off. Arav won a scholarship to a city engineering college. It was a world he'd never seen, shining buildings, polished classrooms, students with laptops and fluent English. But he never let the gap frighten him. He learned quickly, spoke little, worked hardest. Meanwhile, Mira stayed in Sunderpur, teaching younger children, helping her mother, and saving every rupee she could. She eventually applied to a teacher training institute in the nearby town, the first girl from her village to do so. When she got in, she cried quietly, alone in her hut, too proud to show the world. Letters between them turned into emails. They still met during holidays, sometimes just sitting silently under the banyan tree, the wind carrying their unspoken dreams. Years later, Arav returned to Sunderpur, not as a laborer but as an engineer. Mira, now a trained teacher, was running a small school from her old home. But space was tight. Resources were few. So, they decided to build something together, a real school. One with benches, chalkboards, books, and dreams stacked higher than the roof. Arav designed it brick by brick, just like his father taught him. Mira developed the curriculum, trained local women to teach, and brought education to the doorsteps of children who had once only known fields and looms. The villagers watched in awe as the boy who carried bricks and the girl who spun yarn became the backbone of Sundarpur's future. Eventually, yes, love blossomed, not the poetic kind that fills the pages of novels, but one rooted in respect, in shared purpose, in battles fought and won together. They married under the same banyan tree where they had studied years ago. But their story was more than love. It was about grit, about holding on when the world tells you to give up, about rising, not by stepping over others, but by lifting together. And in Sundarpur today, there stands a school with a plaque that reads, "Built by the hands that once carried bricks and spun yarn. Built for those who dream." Arav and Mira didn't escape their route. They transformed them. Together. Years had passed since the school in Sundarpur first opened its doors. What began as a two-room classroom now buzzed with the laughter of hundreds of children. The village, once forgotten by time, was slowly becoming a model of rural transformation. And at the heart of it all were Arav and Mira, no longer just the boy who carried bricks and the girl who spun yarn, but community leaders, mentors, and parents. Arav now worked as a civil engineer for a government rural development program, but he kept his weekends reserved for Sundarpur. Mira, on the other hand, had taken her work full-time, running the school, managing the teachers, and continuing to teach herself. They had one child, Anaya, a curious little girl with her mother's eyes and her father's stubborn determination. From a young age, she would sit in Mira's classroom, not because she had to, but because she loved to listen and learn. Life was good. But growth always brings new challenges. With the school's growing popularity, politicians started taking an interest. Some wanted to use the school for votes, others promised funding only if Arav and Mira aligned with their agenda. The couple politely declined the offers, refusing to let politics stain what they had built with pure intention. But the pressure didn't stop there. As Sundarpur developed, land prices rose. A local businessman, backed by investors from the city, came to Arav with an offer: tear down the school and sell the land for a commercial complex. They offered more money than the couple could dream of, enough to buy a life of comfort. Arav took the proposal home that evening. Mira read the papers silently. Then, without a word, she walked to the classroom and sat on the floor where the youngest children studied. She looked at the worn chalkboards, the drawings on the walls, the tiny shoes lined outside. "Do you remember why we built this?" she asked softly. Arav nodded. They tore the contract the next day. Turning down the offer made waves in the village. Some called them fools, others heroes. But for Arav and Mira, the decision wasn't about pride. It was about purpose. Instead of selling, they decided to expand. Arav began designing new buildings using sustainable materials: bamboo classrooms, rainwater harvesting systems, solar panels. The expansion wasn't flashy, but it was smart, clean, and built to last. Local villagers were trained as construction workers, paid fairly, and involved in the entire process. Mira, meanwhile, launched new programs: a library, an adult literacy initiative, and a health education wing for girls. She trained young women in the village to become teachers, creating a ripple of empowerment. They weren't just educating children now. They were educating generations. One evening, Anaya asked her parents, "Why didn't you take the money?" Arav smiled. "Because not everything valuable comes with a price tag." Mira added, "Sometimes, real wealth is what you give to the world, not what you keep for yourself." Anaya thought for a while. "Then I want to give too," she said. Arav and Mira looked at each other and nodded. Their daughter was growing, not just in age, but in heart. One day, a man in a crisp white shirt visited the school. He introduced himself as a government officer from the Education Ministry. He had been reading about Sundarpur's transformation for years. Quietly, he had tracked the school's progress, and now he had come with a proposal: to replicate this model in 100 villages across the state. But there was a condition. Arav and Mira would have to lead the effort. It was the biggest decision they'd ever faced. Leaving Sundarpur, even temporarily, felt like leaving a part of themselves. But the thought of spreading the dream they built to other children, other struggling villages, made the decision clear. They agreed, under one condition. Sundarpur would always remain the heart of it all, and the school would always be free. Over the next few years, the two traveled across villages, training teachers, helping communities build their own schools, and using local materials and talent to create sustainable education systems. Ariv's engineering brilliance and Mira's educational passion became a model not just for the state, but eventually the country.